Greetings again, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's been 8 years since I've been on this platform. I've made a lot of content, made a lot of friends, and I can't tell you how much different my life is from then and now. It is like night and day. Coincidentally, I have a guest, an anonymous guest or a guest who wishes to remain anonymous, who's going to talk to us about how a narcopath or a narcissist behaves like a victim. He terms it, these are his terms, not mine, is victim mimicry. And he's not speaking of the way that a narcissist will copy someone. They used to call it mirroring, and I don't, mirroring doesn't, never really quite defined it correctly. If you're going to talk about mirroring, I do believe that mimicry, the narcissist mimicking you is better, or copying. Uh, I think it's a better term, but that's not what he's talking about. If you'll go back to some of my previous videos, there was a fellow that I used to have discussions with named Connor, and he has put some of these in the diagrams. The diagrams are fantastic. I do believe that he's a systems analyst, so he has a way of putting this probably any subject that he touches would be laid out in this kind of flow chart diagrams. They're amazing, very very neat stuff. So, but today or the one I'm going to play today, our guest is anonymous, but he touches on some of the same things. I'll let him discuss it with you. These are not my terms, so I really can't take any credit for for the work that he's done. So just give it a listen. At the end, he has about a 10-minute video creative endeavor that he produced. It's funny. The delivery is really the delivery is awesome. It's really funny. And if you know anything about the Greek characters, Greek gods, and Greek tragedies, if you will, good fellow. So anyway, so happy 8 years for all of you that are coming back and that we're still hanging in here with these channels. And I guess with that, uh, I guess we'll just get into it. All right. Thanks again. I hope to see you all again real soon. Greetings, everyone. Glad that you could join me again. Today I have a special guest, an anonymous guest who is uh, fluent in NPD. And anonymous guest, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for letting me onto your show today.
Absolutely. What do you have for us today, anonymous guest?
Yep. So I've done a lot of research and I want to cover victim mimicry.
Okay. Let's talk about the victim mimicry. How did you come up with the name victim mimicry?
Yes. So victim mimicry is where someone pretends to be a victim, but they aren't. The whole mimic concept is actually quite interesting. So we'll cover that very, very briefly here. You
Okay.
have the dupe, you have the model, and you have the mimic. And so what you have with those three players there is the mimic is going to try and act as the model as it targets the dupe. The dupe is the person it's trying to fool or the thing it's trying to fool.
Okay. Can I ask you a
Does this make
question real
sense so
quick
far?
before you go on, though?
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. I want to make sure that the victim mimic is not the same as what we used to term mirroring. They're not mimicking you.
Sometimes they can try to mimic you, but being a victim mimic is a whole other thing. It comes with a whole different. They're a whole subtype of a personality. The victim mimic personality is its own entire thing. And once you understand that, which is my goal today,
Okay.
then you're going to be able to go, oh yeah, that narcissist is clearly a victim mimic. They're doing all the victim mimicry crap, and I'm on to it now. And
Okay.
there's
So
actually a word for
we're
that
not
now. We
hang on.
get
We're not talking about them mirroring you like they mirror their victim or copy them. That's not the discussion, right?
No, this is much larger than that. There is the
Okay.
mirroring itself is actually when the mimic tries to dupe the model itself. So what the victim mimic would do then is it as the mimic would say, okay, you're the model who I'm going to try and be, and
Mhm.
then I'm also going to try and fool you, and that is mirroring. But that's not just victim mimicry and a victim mimic. There's
Yeah, because
more to it than that. And I want to, yeah,
right, the mirroring has been around for a long time. They've discussed that for decades. You could call it mimic if you wanted. You could call it copying, but the idea that you're speaking of is the narcissist actually mimics being a victim.
yes, that's a huge part of it. And plus, there's an entire personality that goes along with it, which, as I explain it, it'll make sense.
Okay, like more of the
Perfect. So
covert.
let's
I
let's
could see a covert narcopath being mimicking being a victim.
Yes, that's exactly where we're getting here. So
Okay.
victim mimicry, it's all about being covert, and then being the victim mimicry part of it. It breaks into a bunch of other things. But once we establish this, it'll make sense. Basically, victim mimicry is what victim mimics use to appear as the victim and not evil. They never will try to appear as an evil victim. That would defeat the purpose of victim mimicry, which is to secure victim status for themselves and even deny it to their real victims.
Mhm.
If you've ever heard of DARVO, deny, accuse, reverse victim, and offender, that's part of it. That's part of the victim mimicry. So it's all intertwined here.
Yeah, Darvo's another old concept too. It's been around for a while, but you're expounding on that.
Yes, in particular, it's the victim mimicry aspect that once we understand it, you can see these assholes coming a mile away. You can see these narcissals coming a mile away, and it makes it so much better once you understand this, because this is what they're doing, and we know we've seen the behavior, we have the data. But then the problem was, what do we call now? What do we call this bullshit that they're doing? And we've come up with a bunch of words like gaslighting and crazy making, but we can never really come down to, like, what the fuck are they? And they're a fucking victim mimic.
Hmm. What's an
Okay,
example?
so
How do
I'm gonna
they? What would they do to mimic being a victim uh, to obviously manipulate you into some behavior?
So there's a lot that they can do. So there's flogs, which is fear, obligation, guilt, sympathy. All of that, they try and paint you as the person with the problem, the reason why things are bad. We get some really grotesque cases. A good example is a rapist saying that, really it's your behavior that it's you. Sorry, it's not my behavior that's the problem. It's your attitude. If you had just consented, it would have been rape in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so, like, it's creepy too, and so you see that a lot with pedophiles, where they say, "Oh yeah, the 10-year-old girl came on to me," and it's like I know that's bullshit. Like, no, no, it's total bullshit, and they're absolutely lying. They're doing a Darvel. They're denying, accusing, reverse victim, and offender. That, like, they're doing it, and so that when as we kind of explore what the fuck this is, and this thing which, and historically, victim mimicry has always been the thing that destroys a civilization. It's always been victim mimicry, because what happens is your justice system gets compromised, and then it doesn't matter who's a victim anymore, because accusations mean you're guilty. So whoever accuses you of something, then you're automatically guilty, and it destroys your civilization. It absolutely destroys it.
Kind of like the victim groups we see today.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, exactly, and that's the it. It's been a long time thing in history. It's not like victim mimicry has just started up now. Victim mimicry has been around for a long, long time, but no one's ever really figured out how to connect the dots in that particular way, because we didn't have the internet. for very long. And as a species, the internet is only a very recent thing where we can share ideas and concepts and actually have huge amounts of understanding and videos, like actually having videos of other people recording. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I know that's true. I don't have to just take your word for it.
Hmm.
Like the amount of data that we have now is enough to figure these bastards out. And so I want to make sure that we understand what victim mimicry is and what the victim mimic is, because when you look at the victim mimic's nature and the way they go about and plot and do all this horrible shit, it once you understand what they're after, which is a victim status, and the ways that they go about it, it becomes so easy to spot. And at that point, the fucking covert narcissists, which for like, because that's been the big problem, right? Over narcissist for the most part, you spot them, yeah, going, yeah, this person's a fucking piece of shit, whatever. You don't marry someone like that. You don't go, oh yeah, this person's a piece of shit, I'm gonna marry them. That's not how this works.
Not usually.
well,
Well, let me
well,
ask you a question then.
and I mean,
So it seems like if they're whoever's the biggest victim wins in this social engineering, right?
well, the way it works is it's all about enslaving someone else. It's under the guise of I'm the victim, you owe me reparations, but really
Wow.
it's all about enslaving the other person. So like a parasite, the parasite is going to try and attack you, and it's going to say, hey, I'm actually the most important part of your body. You need to feed me and listen to me and do exactly as I say, and everything will work out just fine. And it's total bullshit. It's a parasite, and it's not going to work out fine. Hey, you have a parasite.
Uh-huh. Is there any triangulation
So
involved in the victim mimicry?
yeah, so there's something called the Cartman drama triangle. And that one there gets into what happens when you're dealing with at least one victim mimic or one cluster B or one manipulator, where the carbon drama tries to form this dynamic of hero, victim, and villain, or a persecutor, you could say. But these concepts, they cover sort of a basic understanding, but they don't delve into the victim mimicry aspect, because the problem is you're usually getting a good person in the mix. And that's because they're trying to enslave a good person. And yeah, I'd like, look, if a victim mimic tries to enslave another victim mimic, it's just a parasite trying to get another parasite to do its bidding, which generally won't work out. They're not high energy. They're just low energy people. They're not motivated to do anything except be a parasite and say that they're the greatest victim of all time. And and so the problem here that we're dealing with is these victim mimics. Yes, there is triangulation where they will try and use someone as the villain, paint them out to be the bad guy, so that they can be a victim of them. So it's like a frame job. If I frame someone, maybe I stole money from a bank and gave it to another person, and then the person didn't realize that all of a sudden that money's stolen. And then I say, oh yeah, this is the bad person, and now I'm the hero, and they're the villain. I've done it. I've saved the bank, and so there is triangulation like that. But to really get into it, there comes to be like really insidious ways of victim mimicry. And a good example of this is when you have a wife, husband, and child dynamic. Um, the what happens is if the victim mimic, let's say the mother's the victim mimic, right? The mother might very much enjoy actually having the father fail and be emasculated. And what happens is the father will basically try to please the wife, because the wife will be saying you can't do anything right, which is a big red flag. That whole devaluation shtick where you can't do anything right, that ties into some very deep, dark shit. And I can touch on that, but what happens is the husband's trying to please the wife, and so basically gives the kid what he wants if he's having a temper tantrum. And then the wife can then say, okay, now I've got my victim status, because now I can say the husband went behind my back to please the child and isn't doing proper child discipline. And so I'm such a victim of my husband and my family and yada yada yada. And it's shit like that. They set up shit like this so that they can get victim status. And
Mhm.
they set up the dominoes in a certain way. And so yeah, the dominoes can be there could be many, many dominoes, but their end goal is at the end of the day, they want to say that they're the biggest victim of all time.
Right.
And they're not interested on actually fixing anything. You'll notice that with victim mimics, it's all about victim status is all mine, 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 mine. And only through me are you allowed some victim status if you'll be my flying monkey. That's how this thing works. And so I want to touch on some brief concepts here. We have something called false positives, false negatives, true positives, true negatives. Mimicry is all about dealing in falseness. So what happens is the victim mimic is always going to be doing false bullshit. They're going to be sending out false or deceptive signals, and it's all bullshit. And it's all to make them get the victim status and falsely try to get the victim status because again they're not doing it to actually stop a problem. They're not doing it to actually do like, hey, something's wrong here, this needs to stop. They're farming victim status. And so if they need to hurt someone to be a victim and and falsely accuse someone of rape, they'll do it. They'll do it. They really will. And the problem is they destroy the credibility of people who would be trustworthy. Like normally you would want to take someone at their word when they say, "Oh yeah, I was
Mhm.
raped by a bad person, and this is the bad person that raped me." Sure,
Right.
you want to take them at their word, but the problem is the victim mimics do this shit, and so you can't take them at their word. And it's like the little story of the boy who cried wolf. He cried wolf so much that eventually you couldn't trust him. And so then when a real wolf arrived, he got his guts ripped out, which is the point of the story, saying, yeah, when you betray people's trust enough, people are gonna fucking stop listening to you. But
Mhm.
so the way that these victim mimics work, because they can't just cry wolf all the time, they have to mix it up a little bit. That's why they go to these extreme lengths to make themselves out to be the victim of you and to gaslight you just constantly and constantly scheming and doing all their energy is going towards this. None of their energy is going towards being a better person. They're not
Right.
interested in that. That doesn't give them the victim status they're after. They've really decided what they want in life, and no one's going to stop them. And so what happens here is there's types of mimicry and you can classify it like this. Whenever there's a false negative or a false positive, if it's false, you know it's false. If it's negative, a false negative works like this: I am not a victim mimic. And in that case, if it's a false negative, the person who's saying they're not something, they actually are that something. An example of a false positive is I am a victim mimic. And if that's a false positive, it turns out the thing that they're saying they are not. If that makes sense. So this gets again, this is how you spot falseness because there's falseness at every level of these covert aggressors. And I want to talk
Mhm.
about a few things here. So you have an aggressive personality, and an aggressive personality is going to do bad things, but they can be overt or covert. Now, what happens is the covert aggressors, uh, like for example, not all aggressive personalities are covert aggressors. Some aggressive personalities can be very direct and overt about robbing or raping you, but not all covert aggressors are victim mimics. So they can find other excuses besides playing the victim card. They had nothing at all to do with your unlucky accident type of deal. Uh, in terms of a victim mimic, the victim mimic is a specific type of covert aggressor. They will play the victim card at someone's expense. I'm a victim of you, so now you owe me. And so this is their whole little game that they do. And once we understand that this is parasite as victim, this is predator as victim, they're masking as these things. They're a parasite masking as a victim. They're a predator masking as a victim. And once you see that this is what they're doing, it'll make so much more sense. And that's partially why you get so many weird screwed up things, and why you get the total inversion of justice and fairness. Because what happens is the evil people know that in order for them to keep being a victim, they have to keep going after someone. Their victim status will run out eventually, so they have to keep making themselves the victim of something. Or see, saying that we're still the victim of, see, like white oppression or some bullshit.
Mhm.
It doesn't even make sense, because you have a story that comes out where it's like five black cops kill some black guy. It's like, oh, there's some white supremacy going on right there, and it doesn't even make sense. And and this actually happened. And so what ends up happening is these victim mimics take over your society. They destroy any credibility and trust that your society is built on, and then your whole society just has to collapse. There's no other alternative. Your heroes become enslaved to the victim mimic,
Mhm.
and then they're disposed of. And because the victim mimic doesn't make sure that people are going to be okay at the end of the day. It's all about them and their victim status.
Mhm.
That's their entire thing. And so what happens is people think that they have a victim mentality, but they don't. They have a victim mimic mentality. They're seeking victim status, and they're doing everything in their power to seek victim status and make it happen. Most victims don't. Most victims, yeah, sure, they want justice. Sure, they want to not be a victim anymore. But that's why the victim mimic looks at a real victim and kind of laughs at them, because, oh, you're not playing the long game like I am. You're not very
Wow.
good at this. And it's something. They're in competition mode with you. They're very territorial about their victim status, and you're not getting any. It's all theirs for the taking.
Mhm.
And so this is why secret societies have existed before, where to rule in secret allows you to keep your victim status. There's a big benefit to ruling behind the scenes, being the man behind the curtain, so to speak, because then everyone is just like is going to believe you, as long as you're not seen as the person doing the oppressing. As long as you're not seen as the oppressor, then you can be believed as this victim, even though you're pulling all the strings behind the scenes. And I obviously can't, get into it too much on YouTube about what that is and what that looks like today. But there's some stuff out there that, if you do just a little better research, you'll quickly come to some very interesting conclusions.
Right.
Uh,
I agree.
Again, I'm not gonna. There's some things that we can talk about and we can get into, and I would say that this is a
Look,
quote from Eagle Path
all you
Time.
have to do is who's the biggest victim always in every circumstance.
Yeah,
If you answer that question, you will know what my anonymous guest is speaking of. Please do go on.
yeah, exactly. And you'll notice too that the biggest victims of all can't be criticized. You'll notice that you're never allowed to really say anything about them.
Well,
And
they're victims. How
because
can
of that,
you criticize a victim? What's wrong with you? Right?
okay, that's their first line of defense, and that's a deflection to try and deflect you and shift your focus away from the real issue, which is them. They're the real issue. So what happens here is the victim mimics, they end up doing it where you're not even allowed to talk about them, because they want to be the only ones that decide their reputation, and that includes even defending them. Even if you try and defend them, they will still stab you in the back, because that's the nature of the victim mimic. The nature of the victim mimic is to make everyone out to they're the victim of everyone. So everyone owes them everything now. Is massive to justify their massive
Mhm.
self-entitlement, the massive delusions.
Right.
And so I would say the most evil thing about the victim mimic is they are responsible for making it that much harder to believe real victims,
Hmm.
including the victims they paint as their victimizers.
Right,
How can
because
they be a
it's
victim?
like you said, the
Yep,
term mimic, they are mimicking a real victim. So just to be clear before we go on, there are real victims and real victims that look like the people that are mimicking them. If that's
that's right.
just okay, just so you know that my anonymous guest isn't painting an entire group of anybody as just a bunch of liars. There are victims in these circumstances. So I'm sorry, go on.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And so what happens is there comes a question of how can they be a victim if no one's victimizing them? Someone has to be to blame. And at best, a victim mimic is going to blame society. So and you've probably heard that before where someone says, "Oh, it's society's fault. It's society's fault. That not doing this bad behavior." And we know that they're shifting their responsibility, their own personal responsibility. They're shifting that away regarding their own behavior. So there's a lot that I have discovered about philosophy. There's a lot I discovered about psychology. I would say that psychology is about studying the mind and the behaviors, and philosophy, which has been absolutely demonized and turned into this piece of shit. It's been weaponized into this absolute piece of shit. All the popular philosophies are complete trash. In
Mhm.
today's age, I assure you, all philosophies right now that are being pushed on you, it's all manipulation, it's all bullshit. The whole purpose of a philosophy is to better your mind. A point of having a philosophy, having some rules, having some ideas, and how to generate your thoughts and then decide what's moral and not. All that kind of philosophy, uh, about bettering your mind. That's not the kind of philosophy that they're teaching in schools. It's all Marxist, cultural Marxist bullshit, which yeah, unfortunately, it's all about trying to make you out as the victim and hey, go kill the people that are producing all your food. Except the problem is when you do that, now you have no food. So it's because who's gonna make the food then?
Yeah, I heard that term, something called stochastic terrorism, which is the triangulation I was talking about before, where they point the finger at one group and tell them, well, these are the people that are responsible for your oppression when they're not. And then that group becomes an actual victim. The person, it's almost completely backwards from the victim mimicking being a victim. You end up, if you're on the receiving end, you're the one that ends up being victimized. Funny how that works.
Yes, and actually, it's very scary too because the thing about the victim mimic, and there's a very important image that I have here that I can read off of, and I'm just gonna say this because this explains all their behavior and everything they're doing. The covert aggressor, the victim mimic, much like the ant mimic spider, covert aggressors will initially appear friendly via aggressive mimicry to hide their venomous true intentions. The
Mhm.
covert aggressor knows destroying a person's reputation can and likely will destroy that person's life. The covert aggressor attacks a target's reputation and credibility under the guise of concern or the voice of reason. I know best, listen to me. The character assassination distorts any truth for maximum damage and will be nothing like what happened in reality except Darvo, which again is deny, accuse, reverse victim, and offender.
Mhm.
Covert aggressors know how to lie both by commission and omission. The defamatory smear campaign is carefully refined as to leave themselves an escape hatch known as plausible deniability if called out on their lies. They
Mhm.
lie on purpose with untrue, damaging statements to poison others against their target, who they pretend to care about, but secretly want ruined, enslaved, dead, or a combination of those things. An absolute victory requires permanent silencing and censoring of the victim. The covert aggressor wants the only say, 100% ownership in the matter, and that means going on a mission to destroy so nothing remains to challenge their false narrative. Nothing good will remain as the victim is eventually painted as all bad and ultimately erased from history because they can always find another person that they can say that they're a victim of. And that's
Right.
what they're going to do. That's what they've done, and they're going to keep doing it. Their past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior.
That's big. past behavior is a predictor of your future behavior. They don't stop. They just find another person to pretend and another snow job. Man, go on, please.
Yes, and
This is crazy.
good.
Wish everybody understood
Yes, and
this.
so I would say that one of the biggest things that I've had in my life regarding the victim mimic was is they really do believe their behavior is justified, and that is you noticing their behavior. That's the real problem here. And I've noticed this many times where there was a time where I was actually in high school and I worked on a project with a girl, and I ended up getting 100% on the project as a team project. So this girl didn't have to do anything at all, and we got 100% on the project. And I said, yeah, look, we got 100%. And this girl, her response to me, which blew my mind at the time, was, well, that's not very altruistic of you,
What?
because I got 100% as well, and not just her. Because if it was only her, if I had sacrificed myself and gave myself 0% and she got 100%, then I would be truly altruistic in her eyes. It
Oh,
is
that's
top tier victim mimic shit.
it's
And so the
twisted.
idea that it's so twisted and it's so flawed. And the problem is, it was one of those things where it's like, what happens if you marry someone like that? So in high school, I experienced this where I thought to myself, what if I married someone like that who I couldn't be happy with? Because if I'm happy in the marriage, well, that's not very altruistic of me. I can't be happy at my job either. Because if
That's
I'm
like
happy,
Mr.
I
Nice
do it that
Guy.
I
You
love.
know, the uh, altruism leads to your demise ultimately. Too much altruism. I love that. That's beautiful.
And
God.
it's it's true. And so what happens is altruism is, unfortunately, it's been weaponized in a way where you are seen as a bad person if you are intelligent and you benefit not only yourself but other people. You're seen as a bad person for being intelligent, that actually ties into Carlos Apollo's taxonomy is stupid. So altruism is always about trying to hurt the intelligent person, enslave them, make them into a giver,
Hmm.
for them, the parasite. And that's their entire little thing that they do.
Good Lord. Yeah. Hmm. What are you supposed to say on that? I mean, I experienced this personally, and I know you have too, and then societally as well. It's like the two tie together. It's very strange.
Yes, and it's all, I can actually explain it all. What happens is there's faulty reasoning. The victim mimic, it's surprise, surprise, the victim mimic, is going to be pretty delusional about what they believe that they're owed, because they've decided they're a victim now and forever. And and that's why people say, oh, don't have a victim mentality. It's like, but they're not. It's not a victim mentality, it's a victim mimic mentality. It's a completely different beast. You're getting tricked by the mask that they're putting out. You're getting tricked. They're offering you a mask and saying, this is who I am, and it's bullshit.
Well, you
And
see it.
so
You see it
what
in the
happens.
news a lot, all the time, with the with everybody with everybody has a video, everybody has a camera on their phone now, and there's, I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword when uh, surveillance. But what was that guy's name? Jesse Smollett. That's a big victim mimic. He had to make the whole thing up, and then they proved that he was a liar. Right? You remember that?
Oh,
He's
I'm
the
not
guy that
close
said
with
that
that
two
one. I
guys in
am.
MAGA hats came up and beat him up, and he's an actor. I don't even know what he acts in. I didn't know who he was until I saw the story. But he said that he was attacked by two, I guess, two white supremacists, and they were both wearing Trump hats or MAGA hats or something. And anyway, it was all proven to be a big lie. That's the triangulation that I was talking about. That when they set up a scenario that makes you look bad, it's because there's a third party involved. There's going to be some payoff somewhere. I don't know what his payoff was supposed to be. but
Well,
that's
victim status. It's
yeah,
always
victim
victim
status.
status.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Do you remember that Jesse Smollett case?
No, I had never heard of it till now, but I do know of a different one called Chris Watts, and Chris Watts was a family murderer, murdered his entire family and children,
Oh
and
God, yeah.
yeah, and he ended up trying to say to the police that he's such a victim because this poor father, this father of a child, and all the children were murdered horrifically, and the thing is, he tried to get victim status out of it.
Hmm.
And the thing is, no, it turned out he was guilty, and he'd already been cheating on the wife, and he was going to go with the mistress, and they'd already talked about let's I'll go and I'll kill my family, and then I'll be with you. So
God.
the whole thing is it was already there, and so luckily the next door neighbor had their camera on their house, and the police got footage of Chris Watts carrying out garbage bags containing his wife and children, and just like fucking yeah, guy pure evil.
Is
So
he the one that put him in the like an oil, like a
yes,
tank, like a holding tank?
yes, the oil tanker where he
Oh
where he
God,
tried to
what a
drop them in.
God, how far
He's
does
he's
this
one of the
go?
worst. He's the worst. And the problem is what's really scary too is he tried to suffocate with a pillow one of his daughters first because he decided to kill the children first, then tell the mother the bad news before killing her. Really, really hurt her, right? Got to really hurt her before you kill her. And so what happens is that one of the childs actually didn't suffocate to death, and that poor child should have ran out of the house, but they didn't. They stayed, and they didn't know what else to do. And the fucking father came back and fucking strangled them again and killed them that time.
God.
Just like guy's a fucking monster. And so the thing is, this knowing what a victim mimic is could save your life because if that poor little girl knew to run away and get the fuck away from this monster, she
Mhm.
could have lived. She
Right.
could have saved anyone else, but she could have lived. But then that's not what's taught in schools. That's not what's taught. That no one knows about this. And so this fucking evil monster gets to just prey on whoever they fucking want. And
That's
then eventually, by the time they get caught, it doesn't fucking matter because the person's already, all the people that could have really used that knowledge are fucking dead.
mhm, mhm. That's tragic. And yeah, I remember that story as well. So we see it a lot. You see where you have to really, you have to really be able to discern who's a victim and who's not. And it's not always easy, especially today. So how did you
Yes.
formulate
Yeah.
this how did you stumble across, I don't want to say stumble, but how did you come across this idea, this concept that you were talking about, the victim mimicry? Because this is
So
really
I'm someone
100%
who,
exactly what we've been talking about for the last decade or two.
yeah, so I'm someone who is very creative. And what ends up happening is I can put together concepts and I can imagine things like my imagination allows me to just create a movie in my head. So I can envision all sorts of scenarios. I can envision all sorts of things happening. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a reality. It can be just telling a good story, which I will prove at the end of this video. If you want to add this to the end of your video, I have a donation to make at the end
Okay.
of this video, which
Okay.
yeah, which you can either use or not, up to you. But I
I
I
probably
I
will.
think it would be fun. Good, good. Okay. So what'll happen is I I thought about it and I thought about all the things that had screwed me over in life, because I was interested about the secret of success. And so I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what really has screwed me over? And I was willing to be very honest with myself and ask myself, okay, what have I done wrong? What could I do better? And it came down to because I felt about it. I'm just like, there are people that I trusted that I shouldn't have trusted. And I don't, it doesn't mean I don't want to be an untrusting person. I do want to trust other people. There's some people that you should trust. They're good people. But I found that I just sucked ass at determining who was good and who was bad. I just sucked at it. And I realized that I needed to learn about this shit. So I decided to start with learning about actual like fantasy mimics And so if you know about the term like Dungeons and Dragons, the mimic is usually a creature that pretends to be like a treasure chest. And so you go up to the treasure chest and you think you're going to have some treasure inside, but you open the chest, it's actually just a big mouth with teeth that tries to eat you. And so that's the mimic. And so you think you're in for a good time and it just absolutely shits on you. And and so I realized thinking about the mimic, I'm like, that's kind of what this is. It's all about mimicry. And so I looked at the insect kingdom because in the insect kingdom, the reason I couldn't find any victim mimicry there is because insects aren't really known for their empathy. And so
Right.
victim mimicry can't really exist when there's no empathy around. It's more of a mammal and human thing where all of a sudden victim mimicry can be a thing because they prey on your empathy. And that's something that I noticed. And so I look for certain patterns of people who try to empathy prompt me and are trying to prompt me to be all empathetic and like, oh, that's not very altruistic of you and shit like that. And it just tried to I just try to see, okay, what are you trying to get? Why are you trying to get my empathy here? What have I already given you not enough already? Is this why you after my empathy? And so it came down to me, and I realized because I did consider myself to be an empath of sorts, not in terms of mind reading, but in terms of being able to put myself in someone else's shoes,
Right.
and how would I feel if this was happening to me, type of deal, and I that to me that's so easy to do, but I found that that wasn't helping me, and it was the wrong tool for the job when dealing with these victim mimics. That your empathy really needs to be off limits. You really can't give your empathy out to these victim mimics. You
Mhm.
really can't.
It's an
You'll pay
overdeveloped
the
sense
price
of
for it
fair
if you
play, is
do.
what it is. I had to figure that out myself as well. Especially when they're in some station in life, like a mother or a wife. You don't think that they're going to do this. You don't think that they're going to victim mimic and triangulate you to a bunch of people that you don't. Well, you may or may not know.
Yeah, and they one thing that I would say is very interesting is that the victim mimic it doesn't like being told no. Because if you say no to them, you're basically denying them. You're denying them something that they want. And even if it's something so absurd,
Mm.
so absolutely absurd, the idea that you can tell them no, they fear that because you're showing that you can say no to them, and that scares them. And it doesn't even matter what it's about. I could literally say,
All right, we had to do a little editing there, folks. Okay, all right, continue.
yeah, sometimes get a little passionate about things. Well, good, but the the didn't mimic here, and I'm just gonna get catch my breath here. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, the victim mimic is always going to see themselves as a victim, no matter how horribly they've treated someone else. To them, the problem isn't their lying, cheating, stealing, and abuse. The problem is you start to notice these things, and this is something that because once you understand that this is the games they play, because they never want you to know. They never ever want you to be able to catch on to this because this is how their entire thing works. They need you to be their slave, and if you say no to that, well, now what? They're a parasite without a host, and the host, hey, the host can be fine without a parasite. The host can keep on going, but the parasite without a host, ooh, doesn't end too well. We know how that ends in nature when a parasite can't get a host. It shrivels up and dies like the evil thing it is. And and so I I would say that there's some very interesting things that we can talk about in terms of what the victim mimic actually thinks, because there's an entire mindset that the victim mimic has that goes along with this. Because everyone can pretend to be a victim, but the victim mimic takes this shit to such a degree, to such an extreme, that they start causing these red flags that normal people never do, like literally never do. And so there's something called a factless morality. And this is very important to understand. There's a very clear divide between people who say facts matter. And then there's a very clear divide between the people that go, oh, well, facts no longer applies. Facts don't really matter here. And so, to quote some people from the Democrat side in recent years, we choose truth over facts, Joe Biden. Here's another one. It's more important to be morally right than factually correct. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh God.
And and the thing is, here's the thing: you can't be morally right and but also factually wrong. It doesn't exist. That's not a thing. That's not that you get to be moral means you need to be aligned with reality. Otherwise, guess who? Okay, this is a real super simple way to look at it, just like we've been talking about, so it's fresh in our heads here. If you choose the reverse of a objectively moral stance, which, like, say, factually accurate, which is an objectively moral stance, if you choose the reverse of that or the inverse of that, that's an immoral stance, no matter how you slice it, because you've decided that a moral stance is actually immoral, and now I'm going to be moral. So what happens is, and this fits very much with how the victim processes their own mind here, because they're a victim, and they deserve the victim status, not the actual victims. And and for them, they're the only victim that truly matters. They know what a victim doesn't really matter. The facts get in the way of a liar's fantasy and their power. And they, you never want to let your facts get in the way of a good smear campaign. So it's something, and I would say that when they're doing this, they're trying to be morally superior to you despite reality indicating otherwise, which shows that they're delusional. It's completely delusional. And this is the thing. The narcissist knows what they're doing, but they're delusional. They believe they're God when they're doing it. If I pour myself a cup of coffee, that's all I'm doing. It's not I am God and now I pour a cup of coffee. There's no, they have to add their extra delusions onto everything, and have their delusions branch out and reach as far as wide as possible. And so the thing is, it's almost like a form of prayer for them. I don't actually view narcissists as atheists, because they believe in a God and it's themselves. They actually believe in a God and it's themselves. And what happens is they believe that if they can shift their debt onto you, it's not actually evil, because facts don't matter according to their factless morality. Because now that they can say that your facts don't matter, that facts don't matter, well, now they can't do any wrong.
If they
They
can,
can't
can you
be
say that again?
wrong.
If they can shift their debt onto you, that's an interesting concept.
Yes, if it,
What does that
yes,
remind
if
you
they can
of?
shift their debt onto there's a lot I've seen where they shift their debt, and they say, oh no, this is up to you to clean it up, not me, even though I caused it. It's something. And so the narcissist is always trying to shift all this shit off of themselves. And there it is, debt shifting, but more importantly, there's so many different ways that they do this thing, but they do it, and scapegoating. They do it because, according to their factless morality, it actually is okay for them to do. They actually have given themselves permission to say that this is actually how I'm not evil. And by literally trying to scapegoat someone else into taking the fall for them, it's something. And a lot of this will come down to emotional reasoning, which is feelings over facts.
Mm.
And so and so this is a quote from Ayn Rand. And Ayn Rand said that rationalization is a process of not perceiving reality, but of attempting to make reality fit one's emotions. So because they feel they're the victim and they feel they're owed everything forever, well, of course they're in the right to scapegoat you and do every horrible thing in the book, every single thing. And so it's this factless morality that they believe they're the authority that determines reality, and that your facts are meaningless and your logic's offensive to them. And this is why they believe incredibly stupid shit, like what, how it's how if they read it on a t-shirt, it must be true. It was insane. There was a woman who said that her sport was only for the intelligent. And it's like, wow, what do you mean your sport's only for the intelligent? Like, what are you talking about? It wasn't chess, it was volleyball. So like this is and so, but it turned out after this person died, I figured out what it was because on their funeral or obituary, on their obituary, they had their favorite shirt. And their favorite shirt, or written on their shirt, was volleyball is the sport for intelligent people. It was written on that shirt, and therefore it's true.
Oh, God, what are we going to do with them, right? Well, look, you've made some really good points. Very interesting, of course, always interesting concepts and putting them out there very clearly. We're wrapping up. We're going to wrap up here in a little while. Got a few minutes left. Is there some closing discussion things you'd like to talk about? Anything that you missed, or a wrap up for
Yeah,
our talk today?
unfortunately, I did get carried away with some things, but I will say that the biggest thing that I would like you guys to know today is that there's a whole dualistic and duality, false duality that the victimic dies. And you notice this, right? As long as everyone else is my victimizer, then I'm the biggest victim, right? All that comes down to this dualistic duality thinking. And the false duality, and you notice this. You ever notice how the narcissist or the victimic, they always believe that they deserve unconditional love. But notice how for you, no matter what you do, you deserve unconditional hate.
Mhm.
That's because they've created that duality again. That same sort of idea of, hey, if you're the victimizer, I'm the victim. Hey, if you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy. Hey, if you're hated no matter what you do, I should be loved for no matter what I do. And they create this kind of bullshit and this logic, and none of it's based in reality. It's very important to understand this. None of what they're doing, trying to see it from their perspective, you have to get rid of reality. That's the only way to see it from their perspective, is to say reality doesn't count. All that matters is your feelings and your ego and your victim status. Definitely your fucking victim status. Don't forget about the fucking victim status. And 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 so I would say I want to end it with that, and I want to also have the video donated at the end of this video here, which I think will be very, very fun. And it's a nice short story, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Thank you so much for giving me a shout. It's always so enlightening. You have a such a clear and succinct way of discussion on NPD and narcissism, the cluster B personality disorders and how they affect the people around them. It's just unbelievable. I always appreciate our conversations. So, with that being said, if you will you stick around for a minute, because I'm going to sign off and I want to chat with you for just a bit again. So, thank you, everyone. I'll tell you what. I'm going to talk to my guest for a minute, and then I guess he's got a video for us to put up at the end of this, and I don't know what it is, so I'm excited to see. And I want to thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you all again real soon. Thanks.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, and I have come to share a story with you mortals. Heed what I say and don't let your life become a Greek tragedy. Please keep in mind all Greek gods are flawed, with not taking personal responsibility, myself included. It's an inseparable part of our godly nature. No one proves this more than my wife Persephone, goddess of agriculture and victim status as far as I'm concerned. No one claims to be more of a victim than her. No, really, her entire personality revolves around it, as you will soon find out. This is a tale of victim mimicry among gods. It all starts with Persephone and her merry band of harpies, about you had better know them as sirens. They are bird-like creatures with a human head. My wife Persephone wanted reassurances that she is the greatest victim of all time, of all time. And so what ended up happening is the harpies would tell her that she's a victim, she's a victim, she's a victim. And it was very cult-like. And the mother really didn't like the friends because it was a bad influence on Persephone. Persephone was more than willing to say her mother was the bad guy and that she was a victim of her mother. I believed her, and off we went to the underworld to have a great time. Things were great for about 6 months, but then my life started to become a living hell. And being ironic is I'm already god of the underworld. Why should my life be a living hell? So it became clear that what was really needed was hot potato. And what this meant is, whenever Persephone started saying that she was a victim of you, it was time to ship her off to the other person. So me and the mother would ship Persephone back and forth every 6 months or so, and that would explain the changing of the seasons for all you mortals out there. As for what's going on with Persephone's friends, the harpies, all the sirens, what happened is, when Persephone went away, the mother didn't know that I had taken Persephone away because, I didn't want the abuser, what I thought was an abuser, coming after us. But turns out now Persephone was just a victim mimic. So what happened is the mother had sent the sirens out to say, go look for my daughters. So the sirens searched across the world, but they gave up pretty quick. And they decided that they'll just sing on an island saying, you're a victim. You're a victim. And so hence was born to the mortals the siren song. And they hoped that one day Persephone would come across, but she never would because she was always in the underworld. When I returned Persephone to the mother was okay with not having the little sirens around. And so it didn't bother, telling them anything. So the sirens just continually stayed on the island because they wouldn't take personal responsibility for failing and coming back and realizing everything was fine. Also, Persephone didn't care at all either because what matters is that she's the victim, no one else. That started out interesting enough. So what happened a little later on is I decided to have children with Persephone. And so, the fallacy of opposition, or reverse psychology as laymen might call it, where, I say, oh, your mother, you're such a victim of your mother. She doesn't want you to have kids. Well, surprise, surprise. Well, we should have kids then. Okay, good, good, good. And of course, it's very heroic, the whole pomegranate thing. I say to her, yes, I'm gonna take you away from the underworld, which is trying to keep you trapped here. You're a victim of the underworld. Whenever she starts being too mean to me, and I just give her, hand her off to the mother. It works really well. And so, we have a son and a daughter. And the son is Zagreus, and he's kind of like Dionysus, drinks a lot of alcohol, and he's tasked with maintaining the status quo of cycles, like our relationship cycle of when to hot potato Persephone to the other person. He's got to need to drink as much alcohol as he can because being around both Persephone and her mother, it's hard, and there's a reason I don't do that. So yeah, we have him to keep it this way. Part of his name can mean a pit trap, and yeah, keep someone trapped in the never-ending game of hot potato. So in a way, he's helping to sustain our interesting relationship that we have, which I guess you could say is a bit of a manipulationship. But I'm Hades, and I really don't care about what mortals think of me. Then I have my daughter, Melano, and Milano is basically the bringer of bad news and nightmares. This is actually a dream come true for me because this way I don't have to deal with Persephone's mother at all. Instead, my daughter Melano can deal with the mother, and I just get Persephone at her best. So she can just stay in touch between, me and Demeter. And Melano, though, is quite the goddess of the underworld as well. Her name means one with a dark mind. She is the ultimate mimic in terms of shape-shifting powers. Not only can she shape-shift in the real world, but she can also go into your dreams and shape-shift there. So her power was, she can come into people's dreams dressed as their worst fears to fuck with them and scare them. She can also turn invisible, a very handy little trick. And she can appear as a shadow. So when you see a shadow moving about that shouldn't be moving around, that's her as well. So she can pretend to be your shadow and listen very closely to what you're saying. So she's the ultimate mimic. And she can easily drive a mortal insane. Any victim mimics who try the same stuff, they'll try to drive you insane. Price that I have to pay is very minimal. I've got things under control. As for the sirens, because they're not an actual full Greek god, they're a demigod, and they're not a full god or goddess, they can actually die and be killed and commit suicide. If anyone sails past them and doesn't want to be a victim, they'll kill themselves. They'll totally jump into the sea and end themselves. And very histrionic. And they inherited the godly nature, but they don't have the godly part to back it up. They actually will kill themselves. It's a happy ending for me and my family. But let's talk about the sirens. So the siren song works like this. They tell you you're a victim, you're a victim, you're a victim, just like they did with Persephone. Persephone can listen to the siren song for as long as she likes. But for a mortal, what happens is the mortal will either drown themselves trying to get to the island, or if they do make it to the island, what happens is the sirens will feed off them, not just their bodies. They'll eat you when you're a corpse, sure, but when you're alive, you have something much more valuable to offer them: your attention. Your attention is very, very important to these sirens. And so the sirens will tell you you're a victim, and you'll just lie in the grass, and you'll become nothing, and you'll be nothing and accomplish nothing, and the whole time you'll be pleasantly a victim until you're dead, and you will die, and that's the end of your life. God don't have this kind of problem. We have all the time ever. And it doesn't affect us. We don't have to worry about that stuff. We can take a millennium or two of listening to how much of a victim we are. Not my cup of tea, but definitely my wife's, I would say. Now, very interestingly, Ulysses, or Odysseus, if you want to call him that, he overcame the siren song. And there's a few different ways to do it. One, by avoiding it. You avoid the island entirely. If you ever have to travel past that island, you can do what Ulysses did, which is put earwax in your ear so you don't listen to the song. You can also bang on a drum very loudly and play your own music and listen to your own music and not listen to them, not listen to what their music is, not listen to their little siren song of victimhood. Ultimately, if you have no choice but to listen to the siren song, it's important that you make sure that you don't act hastily. If you get hit with the siren song, you will want to lie down. You will want to do nothing and become no one. That is why it's important. Like Ulysses, he had a good support system where they grabbed him and stopped him from jumping ship. But even then, it wasn't going to be enough. Ulysses had to make the choice for personal responsibility over some promised victimhood. And he did. He chose personal responsibility over victim status. And even though the sirens begged and pleaded and screamed, "You're a victim, you're a victim," Ulysses responded, "No, I'm just personally responsible, and I choose to be responsible for myself and for my family. You can all jump into the ocean for all I care." And the sirens did, ending their reign of terror over humanity. The siren song was defeated, and now you mortals know that it was because of a single hero.